There is a quiet moment before the storm of self-awareness when a person begins to hear the faint echo of their own soul. It doesn't come as a shout, it comes as a whisper, a flicker in the mirror, a heaviness that has no name. We spend years pretending not to hear it. We call it exhaustion, overthinking, bad luck. But in truth, it is the voice of what we have ignored, the shadow of ourselves waiting patiently in the dark. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That is where our story begins. Not in the light, but in the forgotten corners of our own mind. The pain we avoid doesn't vanish, it changes shape. It hides in our words, our choices, our silence. It becomes the quiet reason we repeat the same mistakes, fall for the same illusions, chase the same ghosts. It becomes the invisible author of our destiny. We like to believe we are free, rational, self-directed, awake. But most of us are puppets pulled by invisible strings of old wounds. The child unloved becomes the adult who clings. The voice once silenced becomes the person who cannot speak truth. The anger once buried becomes a cold detachment from life itself. We wear masks of calm, of kindness, of success, but beneath them something ancient stirs, something we dare not name because to name it would make it real. So we keep walking, smiling, working, performing, as if busyness could silence the soul. But the unconscious does not forget. It waits, and every unhealed pain waits with it, patient, relentless, creative. When ignored, it doesn't fade. It organizes itself into patterns, into coincidences, into people who mirror what we most fear to face. That's the secret tragedy of human life. We don't escape our pain. We reenact it. And so, fate isn't written in the stars. It's written in the parts of ourselves we refuse to see. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your unlived life, your forgotten truth. To turn toward it is not an act of destruction, but of awakening. Because the moment you dare to face your own darkness is the moment you begin to understand the light. We live in an age that worships comfort. Every discomfort has a cure. Every silence is filled with noise. Every pain is buried beneath a new distraction. But when you silence pain, you silence truth. And when you deny what hurts, you deny who you are. The modern soul has become an escape artist. We run from anything that threatens our image of peace. The anger, the grief, the fear we feel when no one is watching. We light candles and call it healing. We post quotes and call it growth. But real growth is not beautiful. It's raw, it's lonely. It's a breaking open of everything you built to keep yourself safe. There's a reason the unconscious is called the shadow. It's not evil, it's unseen. It is everything you've exiled from your awareness. The jealousy you won't admit, the resentment you disguise as patience, the desire you shame, the fear you bury beneath logic. We are not destroyed by the darkness we face. We are destroyed by the darkness we ignore. And so we repress. We smile through betrayal. We rationalize failure. We tell ourselves, "I'm fine," until fine becomes a prison. We numb the ache with work, with attention, with anything that promises distance from ourselves. But repression has consequences. It doesn't erase the pain. It internalizes it. The more you deny your sadness, the more it owns you. The more you suppress your anger, the more it controls your reactions. The more you run from fear, the more fear becomes your shadow companion. Carl Jung saw this with prophetic clarity. He knew that every unacknowledged emotion becomes a piece of fate. The hatred you repress will find a target. The weakness you deny will emerge when life tests you. The love you suppress will return as emptiness. To live unconsciously is to be haunted. Haunted not by ghosts but by yourself. And yet we pretend this is strength. We call it moving on. But what we call moving on is often just moving away from ourselves. Sometimes when you look in the mirror, you can feel it. A quiet dissonance between who you are and who you pretend to be. Your reflection doesn't accuse you. It mourns you. Because somewhere inside, the real you still waits to be seen. The human being can only carry so much falseness before something begins to fracture. You see it in burnout, in anxiety, in that subtle feeling of meaninglessness that no achievement can fill. You see it in relationships that repeat the same heartbreak under new names. You see it in eyes that smile, but never soften. And so, the question arises. What happens when you stop running? What happens when you finally listen to the pain beneath the noise? The truth is terrifying. If you stop ignoring your pain, it will speak. It will tell you everything you never wanted to know about yourself. It will strip away your illusions, the stories that made you feel safe. But in doing so, it will give you something greater than safety. It will give you authenticity. The soul is not healed by pretending to be light. It is healed by embracing its night. And until that happens, until you have the courage to sit with your own darkness, life will keep repeating itself again and again, until the lesson becomes impossible to ignore. Because pain, when left unseen, doesn't disappear. It evolves. It becomes your fate. At some point in life, the pain you've avoided stops whispering and begins to speak in full sentences. It speaks through failed relationships, through sleepless nights, through that strange emptiness that follows every victory. It tells you, in its own quiet way, you can't go on like this. This is where the revelation begins, not in triumph, but in surrender. Carl Jung called it the confrontation with the unconscious. It is not a spiritual escape. It is a descent, a journey downward through the labyrinth of your own psyche. The shadow is not a demon to be destroyed. It is a truth to be understood. And the moment you face it, you realize something radical. There is no light without darkness. There is no strength without vulnerability, no freedom without awareness. We like to imagine ourselves as divided, good and bad, strong and weak, light and dark. But this division is an illusion. The human soul is a paradox, capable of cruelty and compassion, pride and humility, fear and courage. To deny one side is to live half a life. The shadow holds everything we have not yet loved within ourselves. It contains the parts we've rejected, the parts that could make us whole. And this is the paradox Jung uncovered. The very darkness you fear is the seed of your transformation. You are not meant to conquer your shadow. You are meant to integrate it, to look it in the eyes and say, I see you, you belong. Integration is the art of wholeness. It is the moment you stop fighting what you are and begin to understand why you became that way. It is when guilt becomes compassion, when shame becomes insight, when wounds become wisdom. The Stoics knew this too, in their own way. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." The obstacle, the pain, the flaw, they are not curses, they are invitations. Each darkness you face is a doorway into a deeper self. You see, there is no growth without friction, no awakening without the fall. The pain you resist becomes the boundary of your consciousness. To transcend it, you must first touch it. When you finally sit with your shadow, not to judge, but to understand, something miraculous happens. The monsters of your mind begin to shrink. You realize they were never monsters at all. Substrat. They were memories asking to be healed, emotions asking to be felt, truths asking to be seen. And this is the turning point. You begin to see that the pain was never your enemy. It was your teacher. The shadow is the map of everything you've hidden in order to survive. When you follow that map, you don't descend into madness. You descend into meaning, because buried in the dark are your most sacred potentials, your passion, your strength, your depth, your empathy. You were never meant to destroy the shadow. You were meant to harvest it. This is why Jung believed that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to do that, you must stop pretending to be only light, because to live as light alone is to live as a lie. You cannot be kind without knowing cruelty. You cannot be wise without knowing foolishness. You cannot be whole without meeting the parts of yourself you once disowned. In truth, enlightenment is not an ascent into purity. It's a reunion with complexity. It's the courage to stand between both worlds, the conscious and the unconscious, and let them reconcile. That reconciliation is the birth of peace. Not the peace of perfection, but the peace of authenticity. The quiet knowing that even your darkness serves the light. When you finally see that, when you stop running from what you are, you begin to sense something sacred beneath it all. The chaos, the pain, the longing, it was never meaningless. It was the voice of your becoming. And so, what once felt like suffering becomes illumination. After the revelation comes the reckoning, the long, quiet labor of becoming whole. Transformation is not a single moment of clarity. It is the daily act of returning to yourself. The world teaches us to rise by denial, to overcome by suppressing, to heal by forgetting. But Jung taught the opposite, that healing begins not when you reject what is dark in you, but when you bring it into consciousness with honesty and compassion. To integrate your shadow is to reclaim your power. Every emotion you've buried holds a fragment of your energy. When you retrieve them, one by one, you gather the scattered pieces of your soul. The anger that once frightened you becomes assertiveness. The envy you once hid becomes inspiration. The sadness you once denied becomes empathy. And the fear you once escaped becomes wisdom. This is not self-improvement, it is self-reconciliation. You cannot become whole by polishing your virtues. You become whole by embracing your contradictions. Because a person who accepts their shadow is no longer ruled by it. The process begins in awareness. When you are triggered, pause. Don't ask, who hurt me? Ask, what is this pain trying to show me about myself? The shadow appears most clearly in moments of discomfort. When you feel jealousy, insecurity, rage, that is your unconscious trying to communicate. Listen to it. Name it without shame. Trace it back to its origin. Was it rejection, neglect, fear of being invisible? Each answer is a fragment of your truth. To meet your shadow is to become your own mirror. To reflect upon yourself with radical honesty, but without cruelty. It takes humility to admit, I am not only the person I wish to be, but that humility is the soil where transformation takes root. In relationships, integration means no longer projecting. You stop blaming others for embodying what you refuse to see in yourself. You realize that the people who irritate you are often mirrors showing you your own hidden wounds. The control freak you despise, perhaps they reflect your own buried fear of chaos. The arrogant one, perhaps they reveal the confidence you've never allowed yourself to feel. Each encounter becomes an invitation to grow. In leadership, integration becomes integrity. When you know your own darkness, you stop using others to hide it. You lead not through dominance, but through awareness. The integrated person no longer seeks control, they embody it, because they are no longer at war with themselves, and in solitude, integration becomes stillness. When you can sit alone without distraction, without reaching for escape, that is when you begin to feel the quiet pulse of your own being. You realize that you don't need to be perfect to be at peace, you just need to be present. Carl Jung believed that every act of consciousness expands the world. When you bring your own darkness to light, you contribute not only to your healing, but to the healing of humanity itself. Because every unconscious person perpetuates pain, and every conscious person ends a cycle. The transformation, then, is not an escape from suffering. It is learning to hold it, to understand it, to let it refine you instead of define you. To integrate your shadow is to become luminous, not by denying the dark, but by illuminating it from within. You stop asking for the light to save you. You become the one who carries it, and that is where freedom begins. Not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of understanding. There comes a moment, after all the storms, all the silence, all the searching, when the war within finally softens. Not because you've won, but because you've understood. You begin to see that there was never an enemy inside you, only parts of yourself that were desperate to be seen. The shadow that once terrified you now walks beside you. It no longer drags you backward, it grounds you. You recognize its voice in your fears, its wisdom in your flaws, its strength in your vulnerability, and for the first time you stop trying to be good. You start trying to be whole. Carl Jung wrote, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." Wholeness is not purity, it is unity, the sacred marriage of what you've loved and what you feared, and that unity changes everything. When you accept your darkness, the world no longer threatens you. You stop needing others to approve of your light because you've made peace with your night. You stop demanding perfection from life because you see the beauty in imperfection itself. Peace, you realize, was never the absence of pain. It was the acceptance of it, the ability to feel deeply without drowning, to see clearly without judging, to love fully without losing yourself. That is the quiet gift of awareness. You stop reacting to life and start responding to it. You no longer chase destiny, you become it, because fate is not something written for you. It is something written by you, the moment you decide to live consciously. Every shadow faced is a piece of freedom reclaimed. Every pain embraced is a seed of light reborn. And every time you choose to see instead of deny, you move one step closer to your true self, the one that was waiting all along beneath the noise. In the end, enlightenment is not the fire that burns the darkness. It is the candle that learns to live within it. So if you ever feel lost, if you ever feel like your pain is too heavy to bear, remember this: what you are feeling is not your ending, it is your becoming, because the pain you ignore becomes your fate, but the pain you face becomes your freedom. Stoic.